Were you always kind of interested in Bitcoin? Tell me how that whole hitting it big happened for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into Bitcoin. My brother was very politically active at the time. I was just 12 years old. He's a bit older than me, and some people got arrested for dancing at the Jefferson Memorial. It's technically illegal to dance at the Jefferson Memorial, and so a bunch of people, including my brother, and he brought me along, went to this protest, and we went to this protest, and literally you had 1,000 people dancing right on the Jefferson Memorial, just to kind of as a big kind of F you to what was basically four people who got arrested and literally slammed on their head on the marble floor of the Jefferson Memorial. That's what they got for dancing. So 1,000 people, we all came down, we danced on it, but there was riot police. There was helicopters, a Black Hawk helicopter with a guy on the side with literally a machine gun. No joke. You can look at videos of this. Don't take my word for it. They had riot police on horseback, and eventually it all kind of popped off, and we were running. And I kind of ironically asked in the middle of running. I didn't expect a response. This guy had this bright orange shirt on with a B on it that looked like a dollar sign. And I was like, "What's that?" And he said, "It's Bitcoin, man. It's going to end Wall Street, bro." And he ran off. And so that's where I first heard about Bitcoin. My brother and I went and looked it up afterwards back home, and we looked that up, and it was literally, kind of under $10 at the time. And we got into it, and it was absolutely amazing. Oh, wait, 1 second, I
Wow.
gotta.
So do you remember, Eric, what year that was that you were there
That was
in
2011. 2011.
2011? Okay. So you start then experimenting with Bitcoin or investing in it?
Yeah, yeah. So I was very fortunate. My grandmother, I think she thought she was going to die, and she gave her favorite grandson $1,000 for college one day. Before, thankfully she's still alive. She's like almost 100 now, and she's like kayaking. It's crazy, but there was a time
Wow.
where I don't think she thought she was going to make it, and she gave her favorite grandson some scholarship money, but I did not put that into my scholarship fund, and my older brother helped me sneak it out of my kid's bank account, my children's Wells Fargo bank account, and we put into Bitcoin. And actually, back then, it was a lot easier to buy Bitcoin just because there was kind of no rules on it anyway. So it was pretty cool. So I got into it. It was easy as buying something off Amazon. And you kind of thought it would be a big deal. You kind of thought it'd be a big thing in the way that you think world peace is going to happen one day. You hope for it. You believe it'll happen. You think people think it's good enough. The world's good enough for that. But you don't necessarily. You're not 100% sure if it's really going to happen. And yeah, and I just kind of spent. It really went big, and I spent every day just trying to get more and more Bitcoin and kind of playing the markets. And and some kids had sports, some kids had video games. I had Bitcoin. So that's kind of my story about how I got into it. And then eventually I had enough money at 15, and I dropped out of high school and moved to the Bay Area for a couple of years just by myself. My parents were pretty horrified, but I was a man with a mission, or I guess a teenager with a mission. And then I started a tech company, and I sold that tech company, and I've kind of been a serial entrepreneur and kind of a little bit of an investor in other cryptocurrencies ever since. So
Wow. Amazing. So this says here you became the youngest Bitcoin millionaire.
yep, at 18, at 18. Now I'm an old man. I'm 25, but
You're so
yes,
old,
that's
so old. So you're 18. Was there one day where all of a sudden, boom, it exploded and you've got millions of dollars, or was this just over a series of years?
I mean, there was a time where it went to like, so I got in around $10. And then, there was went up to around $300, and everyone was like, you gotta sell, you gotta sell. But I was a teenager with no life, and thankfully, at 13, my parents were supporting me, and 14, my parents were supporting me. I was like, I don't have to live anywhere. Why would I? I don't have any expenses. I don't need to sell. And then, but there was a time where it went up to $300, and you're like, oh wow, geez. But it was pretty gradual for me, and there was just such big drops because went up to $300, went back down to like $50, and it just was quite the experience, and I kind of got numb to it, and I feel like just through my whole life, because life is always a roller coaster. I feel like it was good kind of framework for life because it made the natural ups and downs of life, whether that be personal life or business life or launching a startup. Just kind of all the normal ups and downs. It made me a lot more desensitized, and a lot more willing to kind of push through things. So just because after that first big ups and downs, you just get used to it. So
Right.
it was pretty cool.
So 14, you're living at home. 15, you're moving to California to start a tech company.
Yeah. So I joined up with Stanford Startup Accelerator. Normally, they only accept Stanford students, and I was kind of able to skip past that, and kind of be where most Stanford graduates want to be at 15. And I think I was able to do that. I got a lot of press for being like a 15-year-old that dropped out of high school and had some Bitcoin money. And I was interviewed by Charlie Rose, which was really cool. Back when that was a cool thing to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was really neat. Or Charlie Rose's show and CBS This Morning was the show I was on. So
Right.
it was very nice, and yeah, it's a good time.
So what would you say having all that money taught you?
I think it taught me, one good thing is I grew up in a family where we were all kind of dreamers. My parents are absolutely very kind of, conservative thinking, and that's very good. And so am I in many ways, but also just, above all else, it was about kind of dreaming and doing great things. So, so I think that, I kind of had the mindset that anything was possible. And I think that proved everything was possible. So it wasn't just a theory. And, I definitely had some fun moments where you're 18 and, I got a fast car and my license plate said 2.1 GPA because that was my GPA in high school. And that was fun. So there was a little bit of obnoxiousness, but I didn't really have a huge phase of that. I feel like it was I more wanted the license plate than really the car.
Right.
But it was cool. And I was able to, also invest in other cryptocurrencies and other startups. And so that was really neat.
Is there any sort of downside to having so much money that you don't have to work the rest of your life if you don't want to?
No downside, I would say. I think that's pretty blunt. But but I mean, more money, more problems is true. I think my older brother, the one who taught me got into Bitcoin, and he had a good amount of Bitcoin himself, but his Bitcoin was stored on a laptop, and American Airlines lost it when it was stored in luggage. But at the time, it wasn't worth a lot. So he's like, oh, a couple $1,000s, that's a lot of money, but it's not like your life is you think about that for the rest of your life kind of money. But that would have been probably worth more than the amount of Bitcoin I had. So eventually, but at the time it was like Bitcoin was worth $20. You're like,
Right.
oh, that sucks, but it builds character. But now that I think Bitcoin's at like 40 something $1,000 last time I checked. So it's that's a little bit more painful to think about. But he's very chill about it. But he made a good amount of money doing his business, but then it just all became like very stressful. Definitely more money, more problems, and now he's in rural America and is always hiking and goes out in the woods for 7 days at a time and really enjoys his life. And there's a great kind of a great story, and it was about there's this kind of the successful American businessman, and he worked his whole life to retire, and he was able to get a beautiful home right on the water in Mexico, in Baja California, Mexico, or something. It was beautiful. And he went out fishing, and he spends the rest of his life fishing. And then there was this other Mexican, and he was a fisherman, and he kind of in this story, in this kind of a legend, he was like, oh, why didn't you work your whole life? Why didn't you do all that stuff? Why didn't you do a success? Now I get to just spend every day on the beach in Mexico fishing. And he was a fisherman, and he said, oh, well, I've been doing that my whole life, living on a cabin on the beach, fishing every day, because he was a fisherman and he made his passion his job. So that's kind of what my brother does. So he just enjoys camping, and he's kind of sworn off kind of the stressful business life, and it can be very stressful. But I guess I think I really like doing big things and tackling hard problems, and I guess that's why I'm doing Idaho Mobile today. Is I want to tackle hard things and do hard problems, even if it's stressful.
Yeah, that's the cool thing, is that rather than stay in California, you've moved back to Idaho. And
Yep,
tell everybody
exactly.
tell everybody what you decided to do with Idaho Mobile and what it is.
Absolutely. So where I grew up in North Idaho, we had at the time we had just horrible phone and internet access. You know, half the time you made a call out in Rathdrum at the outskirts of Rathdrum, it would say call failed, and you know it was the internet was so slow it was aggravating. So if you ever tried to load a website on your phone or anything else, you're just like, "Ah, it's
Yeah.
horrible. Even the Wi-Fi is horrible." But so you know, I kind of want to fix that problem, and I think internet is the new Library of Alexandria, if you will. It's that you can search. You know, there's some bad things to it, but there's you can search and learn and teach and apply to jobs, anything you can on the internet and connectivity. So I want to come back to Idaho, a place I truly tremendously care about, and provide kind of expand phone and internet service, but then also make it really affordable as well for everyone. And then if you can't afford it, making it free and just pay by me out of my own pocket. So that's kind of the purpose of Idaho Mobile. It's something that's just very near and dear to my heart, just because I had the worst signal you could ever imagine. And then I've driven from northern Idaho down to Boise, and these days I'm a little bit more in Boise. And there's just a million dead spots. It's
Right.
horrible. So I mean, it's just aggravating. And the United States is it's cliche to say, but it's true. It's the richest country in the world, and we shouldn't be having places that have dead spots. And Idaho, has is a very up and coming state. Unfortunately, it's the best kept. It's becoming less the best kept secret in the
Right.
world and in the country. More people are finding it. But it's a very up and coming state, and some of the most talented people I've ever met. It's really quite depressing in some ways, the amount of talented people you meet in the United States and in Idaho, where they should just be able to succeed off their talent alone. But they don't, because there's not enough of a network. I mean, like, kind of business network, although that's growing and that's changing, especially a lot since I grew up. So this is kind of the ability to kind of allow people to connect with people over the phone, over internet, and we're actually setting up hardware in places that have no access, or they're at the edge of access. So that way, if your phone in this coming year or two, depending on where you are in the state, we're kind of starting off with North Idaho, then we're going to get to Eastern Idaho. So that way, if you're on the edge or you just don't even have any signal, you suddenly will get super fast speeds all of a sudden when we set up this hardware in these places. So it's very cool.
Yeah, all of us have been through these dead zones, driving from Idaho Falls to Boise, or Idaho Falls north, even down into parts of Utah as you're driving up to
Yeah.
eastern Idaho. Okay, so what are you doing? Are you actually setting up new towers? You mentioned hardware. How is this going to work? Do you use your iPhone? What are the ins and outs for the average person watching?
Yeah, so you can just go to idahomobile.com. You can type in your address and see if you have good coverage in your area already. So what we do is we do rent out existing kind of tower access. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel in Boise, although we can be cheaper than anyone else in Boise just because we have less overhead. Verizon, they have private jets that they need to spend part of your money on. We're not doing that. We're basically doing it at break even, more or less. So if you're in Boise, you can just get it cheaper and you get the same signal. But yeah, we're setting up kind of, it's less towers now, and it's more kind of like really big backpacks that you put on the side of maybe an existing building, or an existing pole. So they've kind of made a tower into kind of more just a very large backpack, like kind of almost a half a picnic size table backpack, and it's pretty
Right.
thick. So we're going to be setting those up across kind of the state. Again, I'm a little bit biased, starting off with the north, and then the east is next. Don't worry, the east will be next, and then so that's kind of what we're doing. So in places like Boise that kind of already have it really well, we're just being cheaper there, and then in places that are more rural, it will be cheaper and actually have great signal there.
So is it true that people might be able to get a cell phone plan for like $12 a month?
Yep, yep. So in the beginning, we're doing kind of introductory plan of 11.99. So that's really cool. That won't be there forever, but that's just kind of to get people on it. And on that one, we absolutely make no money on that. So I think we make 4 cents on that. So we make 4 cents a month on the 11.99 plan. So that's kind of an introductory offer just to get people kind of interested and we're new, and get people trusting us and word of mouth and everything. So we're willing to kind of do that. So I guess get in, not to sound like an advertisement, but just get in while you can on that front. But yeah, that's kind of the goal. And then we have all the kind of different options and plans and everything. And so it's really good. So that's idahomobile.com. And again, if you go to our social media, we have a form on there. If you are like kind of in a really bad spot, like we had one kid, I did robotics growing up, and there was one kid on our robotics team, and he was a super smart guy, but his parents couldn't even afford power growing up. And much less, internet, and everything. So he biked to school like miles and miles every day, and then he used one of the school computer laptops, and eventually I think one of the teachers just felt bad for him and bought him a laptop, and then he would just charge it only at the school. So if you're in that kind of position, you can go to our Idaho Mobile social media. We have a form on there, and you can apply for it for free. And I would just totally eat the cost of that out of my own wallet. So that's kind of the plan on that front.
That's incredible. I'm just looking here at all of the national publications that have kind of covered this, and the reason behind why you're doing this. Give us a timeline, Erik. You mentioned you're starting up there in northern Idaho. When can we foresee the entire state covered, or what's the goal from here on out?
The goal would be to have every single part of the state, not even like one literal speck of dust, on the ground, hopefully by the end of this year. But maybe worst case 2025. But I think we could do it in 2024. But that is the plan to do it 2024, or worst case 2025.
That's incredible. Okay, IdahoMobile.com.
IdahoMobile.com. Check it out.
Now, what else are you working on? Any other cool projects? Or are you kind of focused on this, and then you'll do something once this is off the ground?
This is the coolest. This is the coolest project I'm up to. So, no, I mean, I think that if this does really well, I don't know if maybe we'll expand this into Utah a little bit. I do have a special place in my heart for Utah. So, but I wouldn't be doing that till, again, every part of the state was covered. So really wouldn't be doing that till next year or the year after. If I were to go to Utah and do this, I do like skiing in Park City. But the skiing in Schweitzer in North Idaho is also really good, and the skiing in Eastern Idaho is terrific too. But I do love the snow. But yeah, probably just this is the main coolest thing I'm up to, and and if Utah's lucky one day, we'll do it over there. But Idaho's a place that it's a place where I'm from, so I really care about it.
That's amazing. Well, I have a feeling there'll be other things down the line, Erik, knowing that knowing that you're just 25 and already disrupting the industry, which is great as far as helping the lower income people as well. All right, IdahoMobile.com. Erik Finman, anything else you want to add?
No. Thank you so much for having me on.